Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the American musician Chris Stamey, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Has got a new album coming out titled Anything Is Possible. I'll put a link in the notes below, but was one of the original founding members of the dB's, and also played with lots of other people and had a very long and varied career in music that you're going to find about in this fascinating interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Chris, it's over to you.
Yeah, I mean, my parents played a lot of the Great American Songbook on the piano. I would hear that after dinner, and we'd go to local performances of Broadway musicals, different, the canon, Oklahoma, Annie Get Your Gun. I mean, all that, and but. It was a time when you had the, early Beach Boys going, surf rock, the Ventures, and you also had Burt Bacharach getting going a little later on, Jimmy Webb. But I started playing in bands pretty early, maybe when I was 13 or 14, I'm not sure of the year. And at that time it was, we all loved English blues music, original American blues music. I mean, I think Peter Green was a big influence on some of my friends. And then a record like Disraeli Gears, Carla Bley's Escalator Over the Hill, things that were a little more complicated. And jump on a couple of years, I know that Jack Bruce's record, Harmony Row, was huge to me. I love that record.
Oh, God, Jack Bruce as well, the solo work of Jack Bruce. So where did you grow up, actually? Where was your home city, town?
I was born where I live now, which is Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But by the time I was 5, we were in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Right.
Which is, there's cigarettes, RJ Reynolds Tobacco was there. Camel cigarettes, Winston's, Salem's. It was a big tobacco town.
Yes. And then did you have any kind of brothers or sisters that gave you any musical direction in life? I know that often these characters that we have can have a massive influence on one's musical direction.
No, I was the oldest, and my brother had a guitar but didn't really learn to play it as I remember. I mean, the biggest influence was my dad, who played piano, including the romantic repertoire. A lot of Chopin.
God, it was quite a sophisticated household you had there, wasn't it?
As far as my dad was concerned, yeah.
Yes. So as the 60s progressed, obviously you were still quite a young teenager, but you would have started to sort of pick up on a certain image or a movement happening from that 63, 64 to 67. Did you start sort of seeing this kind of wave of the early, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, to sort of the world, that kind of transition to psychedelia? Was that kind of on your radar and in your consciousness at this stage?
The rock scene in Winston-Salem was very much a psychedelic scene. Every performance had light shows with the overhead projectors and oil and water and strobe lights. And it was, you'd say, oh yeah, we have a drummer, we have a guitarist, we have a keyboard player, we have a light show guy. It was part of it. And
yes,
a lot of that was homebrew, I think. I mean, there was a band called Captain Speed and the Fungi Electric Mothers that did these crazy live shows, and that was a big deal.
Yes. And what was your first record that you bought? What single or album did you sort of save up and think, right, that's going to be it. I'm going to the record store and buying this today.
Oh, da, 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 da. Well, I mean, I was buying reel-to-reel tapes. We had a tape recorder, and
Right.
not every record company was making them, but the A&M company put everything on reel-to-reel early on. So I would buy reel-to-reel of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, Baja Marimba Band, Claudine Longette, We Five, whatever was on A&M, because they were making the only product that would work on my reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Yes.
And then, but once I did end up with a turntable, I would buy. I mean, a big record for me was Mingus on Columbia. It's a fantastic record by Charles Mingus.
Right.
And Tchaikovsky's Pathetique Symphony, the Sixth Symphony, had a movement that was in 5/4, and I'd never heard of such a thing. I remember I played that over. I don't actually remember the first one. I mean, my first record was called was a picture disc called Little Red Fire Engine, I think, which I still have, but I
Right.
didn't have to pay for it. I was the other thing I remember, particularly from records in my childhood, is possibly one reason I favored the reel to reel is that we did have a family turntable, a mono turntable, but it wasn't wired properly. So when you'd play a record, you'd get a really pretty nasty electrical shock. And I think I associated vinyl with pain for a long time.
I'm not surprised. I think I'd have been quite traumatized by this
Yeah, no
association.
kidding.
Yes. So then, when you get to 16, a magical age in a way, the end of the 60s and early 70s, did you sort of think, oh, this is very exciting? And then sort of the 60s ended on a bit of a downer, didn't it? From the sort of hedonistic and optimistic moment of 67, the Summer of Love, to sort of 1970, where we'd had the death of all these, great musicians like Hendrix, Joplin, Morrison. There's obviously been Altamont, and then the Charles Manson experience had slightly tinged things. Did that sort of make you sort of go, oh, that was just at that moment, oh, that's a bit of a downer?
Oh, I don't know if I mean there was still exciting music coming out all the time. I did, discovered the Big Star Records coming out of Memphis by accident in the early 70s. Would that have been 73 or 74 maybe? And then by the, I mean, if you're talking about 77, I had just moved to New York, and I had a band with Alex Chilton, and um, was a huge fan of television. So the 70s for me were, I mean, what you're talking about, I remember as being more like 1970s, 1971.
Mm.
The first records by the band coming out, and but was that bringing me down? No, no.
Well, it's just that when we sort of have, deaths of young musicians, it's often a little bit about like, oh, that's a shock, this kind of thing. But then having three major people all go so quickly as age, and then when the 60s and then Beatles breaking up, and for some people that must have felt like a bit of a chapter
I
had
wasn't
closed.
really the Beatles fan. I grew to like McCartney quite a bit later, and I do know those records now, and I do appreciate them. But I don't think it was until the White Album came out that I felt like there was something going on.
Yes.
I thought it was kind of like a very accomplished boy band. I think I'm not proud of this. It's just I was a kid, but
Yes.
because obviously they were more than that. But um, no, the Beatles breaking up didn't really ruffle my feathers too much.
Yes. And then you got the 60, then you went to, was it university studying, was it philosophy you decided to go for?
No, I was studying music composition
Right.
with a very skilled composer named Roger Hanet, who had studied with Howard Hanson, and the whole Tanglewood. He knew everybody, and knew all the crazy styles that were going on in the 60s and 70s. I did end up with a degree in philosophy because, in a complicated way, I moved to New York and got my degree from New York University, but it's just the way the credits ended up.
Right, but it was music related or focused.
Yeah, and for most of my academic career, it was the kind of post Schoenberg, post serialism, crazy stuff.
Yes, you were very avant-garde here. So were you
That
sort
wasn't
of,
so much, but that was what was going on. I mean, I guess
yes.
I was familiar with it.
You obviously were walking in quite a few different circles at this point, or on different paths from sort of interest in the band and sort of, I suppose, slightly sort of, I don't know, was it country, folk, pop, rock, as well as classical music as well?
I'm not sure if there was a question.
But I said you were walking in quite a few different areas of music. You weren't just focused on one particular genre here at this point in the 70s.
Well, my biggest influence was my friend Mitch Easter. We had a studio in the basement of his parents' house, and we got a 4-track reel-to-reel tape recorder, which was a new thing for the consumer at that time, a machine that TEC made. And so once we started trying to make recordings like the ones we loved, it really became more of an inward focus, just whatever was going on in the basement.
Yes. So what was your first band that you were sort of part of, which was,
I was
yes,
a blues band called Soup. I had with my friend Peter Holzapfel, and I
right.
think I was on upright bass.
And were you always drawn to the bass at this stage?
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
was
Bass rules. I mean, it's the low end that decides what the chord is, really.
right. There you go. So then when do you then sort of relocate to New York kind of 77 time?
Yeah, I think January '77.
Right. And were you interested in the punk movement at this point? Was that sort of also on your radar?
One of the reasons I wanted to move was that I had seen television, the band Television, play in '75 and in '76. I guess I saw him right after Richard Hell stopped playing bass and it became Fred Smith on bass. Um, and I thought they were fantastic, and they were doing all these things. There were, like, to me, jazz and modern classical and Albert Ayler, free jazz elements involved, and I really ate it up. So when I moved to New York, I kind of thought that all the bands at CBGB's would be like that, and I was quite wrong. They were really the only one. And Talking Heads were a trio, and they were doing interesting stuff. But a lot of the other bands, uh, nobody appealed to me like Television did. And then when
Right.
I started playing with Alex, he was fantastic too, and much more out there than you would have thought. I mean, much more eager to push boundaries.
Yes. Did you start a record label as well at this point?
Kind of. I mean, it was really just me, but yeah, it was like nowadays it's not unusual for indie labels to be sole proprietors, but at the time, I was friends with Terry Ork, who had a label called Ork Records that put out Little Johnny Jewel and was putting out a lot of New York records, and I saw that you just kind of you do A, B, and C, and you have a record, and then you send it to the stores. It,
Yes.
it went from seeming impossible to seeming practical.
Yes. Well, yes, it was quite it seemed quite straightforward, in the 80s, but I guess in the 70s it would have been quite different. So how did you meet Chris at this stage? How did he come onto your radar?
I never met Chris Bell. I put out a record by him, and we talked over the phone. But it was
Right.
Alex who brought me the record.
Right. So that was it. And then sort of how do you sort of then sort of on that, you mentioned television. Did any of the British bands come into your consciousness at this time, like Elvis Costello or Joe Jackson or any of these kind of singer-songwriter types who were they weren't really punk, but they sort of come sort of post-punk period. Did that kind of sound sort of influence interest you at this stage?
Well, I mean, I would hear everybody who was coming through town. I was moving from being an Anglophile to being an Anglophobe for a short period. Neither of which I'm proud of, but I mean, the Gang of Four were knocking me out. There were definitely really great bands coming over, but you got to remember again, I was in a band called the dB's that was on a London label called Albion, which was associated with folks who'd been part of the pub rock scene and still had a pub, the Hope and Anchor, in London. And so I was over in London a fair bit. I mean, Nick Lowe was doing great things. I really thought he had a lot on the ball. And, Elvis Costello was highly skilled. And there's tracks like Watching the Detective. The way the drummer played on that was fantastic. But
yes,
it was at a time when, I would hear everything. I mean, I think the band that my band, the dB's, felt the most akin to, in some ways, in England, was the Soft Boys.
Right.
And in fact, Kimberly Rue just played on a record I'm mastering this week. Robin, I've still seen Robin fairly regularly through the years. But
yes.
we liked the Soft Boys quite a bit. And, Andrew Lauder's Radar Records, Jake Rivier's Stiff was great.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We do love that. There's the Canterbury scene. I don't know if you're very familiar with it, that sort of with people like Robert Wyatt and Caravan and Kevin Coyne and people like that. There was a little bit of a sort of a happening, I suppose, down in sort of...
I mean, Robert Wyatt was a huge influence on this new record of mine. I thought about his productions a lot when I was making it. And I'm not sure where Soft Machine fits into that. And, I've worked a lot with Peter Blegvad over the years, who was involved with Fred Frith and Henry Cow. And I guess, where is Andy Partridge? I just wrote some songs with Andy Partridge.
Oh, yes.
Was he in
XTC?
A different town, right?
Yes, but...
what is that town called?
I don't know what that town's called. But yes, I wasn't sure where his location and where the band sort of came from, actually, on that front. But yes, it's so have you sort of working...
He's from Swindon.
Swindon, classic.
Is that a town?
It is a town, and I think that's north of London. God, I'm being tested here, aren't I? It's a place I've never been to, but one day I might make it. So there you go. So when the dB's came together, was that quite an easy process, or were you sort of advertising for a band at this stage? Did you have that focus that this was going to be it?
It was the same people I'd been playing with since high school, off and on. I just invited them one by one to New York, and we called it the dB's, but we'd been in different combinations for a decade already.
Right. And so you were on the first record, weren't you? That was the only one you did with the band.
Well, I did two albums. There's one called Stands for Decibels and another one called Repercussion I was on.
Yes. And what was that kind of creative process like? How did the band work together at this stage? Did you sort of come together and work it through in sort of a jam session, or did you sort of all come from different angles?
Well, there were two songwriters in the band, and each of us would bring in a song with more or less the parts written. And then as the band played it, we might vary those parts. But I think would always have suggestions for the bassist and the drummer. But they were highly skilled, and um, everybody contributed to the final thing. On the first record, I knew more about recording, or at least I thought I knew more about recording. So I was more involved in how the sounds were captured and how they were arranged for a record. It's kind of crazy, but people like it. The second record, I got my friend Scott Litt to produce with us. So that was really good having an outside ear, and he was a skilled engineer and, a really smart guy. So the two records are pretty different, but.
And then as the 80s progressed, how do you then navigate that next part of the chapter of your life?
Well, I was signed by A&M Records and made, solo recordings using the musicians I liked in New York, people like Bernie Worrell and Anton Fear and Richard Lloyd. And I had started producing, and I got a call to produce a band from Athens, Georgia called Pylon.
Oh, yes.
And, did a bunch of stuff. And eventually, then I was in the Golden Palominos with Carla Bley and Bernie and Jack Bruce and Michael Stipe. And we toured internationally in America. And of course, playing with Jack Bruce was really a thrill, but they were all great. Peter Blegvad was in that group as well.
Yes.
So those were great times. And then when I met my wife, I relocated back down to North Carolina and started a studio, and then produced a lot of people for, a couple of decades. I mean, I don't know, people you know, Ryan Adams.
Oh, yes.
A band called La Tigra that Kathleen Hanna was in or is in. A bluegrass band called Chatham County Line. Tift Merritt. I don't know. This is more like an allmusic.com.
Yeah. But you obviously, that there was that sort of moment where there was a sort of the movement towards an alt country sort of vibe, wasn't it? With people like you, because you did Whiskey Town, didn't you, as well, and people of that nature. So you obviously had become the go-to producer for that sound and that quality.
I'm not saying that I am anywhere near as great as he is, but I always admired what Todd Rundgren would do, where he would produce kind of all comers, and try to do what's necessary. And if very little was necessary, he'd do very little. But I always have been drawn to projects with good singers. I don't know that I was seen as particularly as I did Alejandro Escovedo. I guess people think of him as kind of Americana, but I don't know. I was really doing all kinds of things.
Yes, well, you obviously had that sort of network of people that happened. And then you got a new solo album coming out very soon, haven't you? And you've released a single. So when did you start recording and writing this material?
Last year, and it was almost finished last year, but as far as the recording. And then I had to put a pause in it and go tour with the dB's actually did a tour the second half of last year.
Right.
And so I came back to it, and I guess I finished it in January of this year.
Yes. And what was it like sort of getting the dB's, working with them again? Has that been an interesting and a fulfilling project?
Well, there were many positive aspects. I mean, the old you can't step into the same river twice adage is true. I'm not sure we were, any of us, the same, but we definitely gave it our all. And took a while to get the tempos back up. There was some fast things on the dB's records. In some ways, I think those shows were the best the band ever did. they were probably certainly most consistently the best. And there's a very good live record. It's like a double, 24 tracks, I think, that's going to come out next year. So maybe people, will either agree with me or not. But,
yes. There you go. I mean, with the, when you go back to those songs, which were only 45 years ago, are there any that have aged better than others? Or are there some that you think, yeah, we can't perform that live now? That would be difficult to be singing those lyrics or delivering those kind of tracks.
For me personally, the dB's records were not the height of my songwriting. I think that I was on a good path before them, and then after them, I found myself again. But the late '70s, early '80s were a confusing time, and I just moved to New York, so I was being bombarded with a lot of stimuli. It's hard, I can say songs that I think are the best or not the best, and then people may disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't know that I'm the best judge, but I think Peter Holsapple had been writing songs a few years longer than I had, and I think he really wrote some great songs during that time. So I guess I feel the strongest about Peter's songs.
Right. Yes. No, I just wondered, because sometimes I've seen artists who've sort of gone performing still and then sort of sometimes find it a little bit too tricky to sort of sing the lyrics that they had written sort of when they were 18 as 60-something-year-olds, thinking, I'm not sure if I can really pull this off with any great sort of not enthusiasm, but sometimes kind of honesty, I suppose. Yeah.
I think the dB's found songs that we felt fine about singing, and there were a few that we didn't play, and some of those that we didn't play probably they were just too stupid.
Yes, it's an interesting one, isn't it, really? Do you enjoy the kind of creating your solo albums, by the way? Because you've been very prolific sort of over the decades. Has that always been something that you've enjoyed doing alongside the production work as well?
Well, I like writing them, and sometimes I like recording and producing them. And then at the end of the day, I like it when I can kind of forget about them and then get a thrill from them. So that's a kind of a measured response. But I did decide about 6 or 7 years ago, or maybe it's been 10 years now, that for me, the best way forward, I was writing, let's say, these things that were kind of like writing audio movies where I would think, okay, the guitar tone can change here, the backward drum fill here, we can go to halftime here. I was writing these songs that included the way they would be recorded. And it was just taking a long time. And I realized that I could write a lot more if I wrote them down on paper concisely, with melodies and chords and a few specific notes, and tried to get it on not more than 2 or 3 pages. And then once I'd written that, it's as if you're writing a script and not making the movie necessarily. So I would write these songs that were just the script, that was just the paper, and I'd put them in the stack on the piano, and then I'd move on to another. And it's a lot more efficient. I can write a complete song that I like, sometimes in an hour, sometimes in a couple of days, and then I move on, as opposed to writing a song, demoing the song, arranging the song, recording the song, releasing the song, promoting the song.
Yes.
Having said that, I did have some in that pile on the piano that I thought would be really good for a record, and that's what's ended up on this record, and I really am proud of it. For example, the first track, which has been somewhat arranged in I guess you'd say a Brian Wilson style. It started pretty much as a Jerome Kern kind of Chet Baker song, if you just heard the melody and the chords. And I couldn't be more pleased with the way the arrangement took it somewhere else. So I guess there's pleasure to be found in every aspect of it, but for me, the greatest pleasure is in that when you go into that right brain state of mind and are, swimming in the creative waters for however long it is, and then you come out of it and you think, what just happened? What is this song? Where did this come from?
Yes. So what was the first track you wrote? Was that the title track, which is Anything Is Possible? Was that the first kind of...
No, that was pretty much later. That's a good question. It might have been a song called After All This Time, which is very symmetrical, like 16 bars and 8 bars or something. And but it's in the Great American Songbook mold, or it's following those rules, and I'm very pleased with it. It's not a complicated song, but that was setting the tone for a little more of a crooner record than I ended up with.
Right. Yes.
And then I was playing some shows with the dB's, and I opened some shows for the Lemon Twigs, and Mitch Easter and I did some shows with our old band Sneakers, and that all pulled me back into the electric guitar world more. And that's where the title track came from, Anything Is Possible, which is a little bit of a... Well, I asked Mitch to play drums like Bev Bevan from The Move. We used to love Bev Bevan. I mean, he just was so crazy on those Move records and the first Electric Light Orchestra record.
Yes.
And so that track was a really fun one to kind of do in a high school way.
And it's amazing because you and Mitch go right back to the very late 70s, don't you, with your
No. I've known him since 1961.
Oh, 62. Right. Well, I mean,
we were in, I think it was the summer of first grade or second grade. Maybe it's the summer of second grade.
Right. My God, you've been together for so many decades, so many changes. And what was it like? I mean, having a reunion with the Sneakers, was that, did that take much organising to do that little reunion tour?
No, it wasn't that long a tour. And, those are songs we know. I mean, we rehearsed, but it was for fun. And those songs were all written for a band to play. They weren't over arranged. I think they were a little more stripped down. So it was easy. And,
and who do you have sort of playing on this album? Who's your band that you've put together for this particular release?
Most of it is a group that I call the Fellow Travelers. Jason Foreman on acoustic bass, Dan Davis on drums, and Charles Cleaver on piano. But there are, the Lemon Twigs sang on a bunch of songs. Pat Sansone from Wilco. A great player named Probin Gregory, who's played with Brian Wilson for the last 10 or 15 years and plays all these different instruments. Wes Show came in near the end of the record and helped me finish it. He's a great arranger and keyboard player and has built internationally lauded studios all over the world. He's a studio designer. I don't know. I'm going to forget. There are a lot of people ended up making small contributions.
Yes, my God, I can see the list. This is very huge amount of people that you put together. Does it feel like quite a responsibility when you get in a project like this together, thinking, blimey, we've gone so far now, and this is a lot of investment of time and money and energy and commitment. Do you ever sort of feel exhausted by it? Or does it ever get to a point where you're thinking, gosh, I've started it and this is occasionally overwhelming, or does it not feel like that?
Well, you're making me feel like I should.
No, it shouldn't.
No,
But I'm
no,
just,
no. It's I mean, a guy like Jason Foreman comes in to play bass and thinks of things I would never think of. He's so fluid and such an amazing player. I mean, I, sometimes, particularly with the strings, sometimes they're just playing what I've written, and it can be very laborious because I can rarely afford to hire, almost never afford to hire 12 string players. It's usually a few good players overdubbing constantly. Um, but no, I mean, you get to be in a room where the air is moving from these instruments. I mean, it's just a wonder and a privilege.
yes, absolutely. And when the album comes out in the summer, do you have any plans to go on the road and do some live dates around the country?
I'm doing a few. I think New York, Los Angeles, Memphis, Nashville, Minnesota, Chicago. And I'm also doing some shows with the Big Star Quintet, which is a
Right.
group with Jody Stevens, Mike Mills, Pat Sansone, and John Auer. Um, and all those guys are great, and we have a really good time playing together.
Yes. Do you ever sort of come out of America doing shows, or are they mostly based in the USA?
Well, I mean, I've played maybe 10 different venues in the end of 2023, I believe. I did a folk tour, or I did a tour of a bunch of cities where I would show up and I had arrangements for cello. So I would do a duet show with a cellist I'd never met before. And then I was going to play the Betsy and do a few things in London last year, but at the last minute, the plans changed.
Right.
I'd love to go back.
Yes. Well, I would imagine. I think it's
Particularly London, particularly feels easy, or all of England, But um, Spain is great. I'd love to go back to Spain.
it's interesting. A lot of people often have a particular from the UK have a particular country that sort of supports them to the point of keeping them going as musicians, and often Italy, Spain, it's one of those can be sometimes people are huge in those countries and
Yeah,
completely unknown in another, but it's good to be big somewhere, isn't it, really? So,
it used to be the New York jazz musicians would end up in Paris, where they would
right.
be loved and not, and we're in New York. They were just giving them a hard time about the cabaret laws.
Yes, it's tricky, isn't it? And when you look at your solo work, which has been It's a Wonderful Life up to The Great Escape, how do you sort of feel, if people were to ask you to rate which ones you would particularly recommend out of those records, which ones would you sort of place as your sort of favorite records that you, favorite memories from recording and writing those tracks?
Well, I think this new one and the previous one, The Great Escape, uh, it's really the songwriting. It seems very consistently strong to me. I'm very happy with the way those songs turned out. Um, I think parts of Travels in the South are great. There's a song called Kierkegaard. I think it's really good. Um, I don't know. I mean, the problem is once I make them, I don't listen to them anymore. So it's been a while on those.
Yes, I would imagine this is a problem, isn't it, really? Sometimes forgetting them and then sort of having to find a set list when you do play live must be even more tricky.
No, it's fun. No.
So when this record comes out, will it be available vinyl, download, CD? How are you going to be
It
distributing it?
will. In fact, my label owns their own pressing plant in Poland, which is really fantastic. So, yes, it will be in all formats.
God, that is so good. And what's your record label then?
It's called Label 51.
Perfect. Is this the first record that you've released on label 51?
It is.
God, how did they discover you?
Everybody was telling me I should send them the record, and I did. And the owner really, really liked it, and he was playing it every day for a while. And then I really liked him, and we said, "Let's do it."
My God, that's the perfect thing, isn't it? Dear old, well, there you go, Poland. You just have to. Who knows what the tariffs would be, but I'm sure you'll be able to navigate that.
Now, there is an exemption apparently for media-like records. The Trump tariffs are not supposed to affect them. That's what I've been told.
I'm sure that'll be fine. They're not going to be they're out of the radar, aren't they? Let's face it, that'll be good. So you'll get them made in Poland and then distributed around the world that way.
Yeah, shipped from Poland. Yeah, I mean, there's a distributor who handles the record. I don't actually do that.
No,
They go with there's a company called Symphonic that seemed very solid.
Very handy, very handy. And then once this project's out the way, what have you got for the rest of the year that's on the calendar, on the horizon?
Well, I guess this week I'm mastering a record that will come out in the fall. That's been a big collaboration. It's called the Salt Collective, and I'm the producer. The inspiration is a guitarist who's located in Paris named Stefan Schuck, and I don't know. I already said Kimberly Rue was involved in it. Amy Mann, Andy Partridge, Jason Faulkner, a singer named Chris Price, Lemon Twigs again, Lynn Blakey, who's an excellent American songwriter and singer, Mike Mills. I know I'm leaving people out.
Yes. So what was it? What was this? So yeah, this is a very big project. So what's this project called?
The Salt Collective.
The Salt Collective. Because I think you mentioned Jason Faulkner. He was in a band called Jellyfish, wasn't he?
Yes.
There you go. I remember he had his studio. I did an interview with him, and he had his studio he said, look, that's just behind me in my, not garage, but, in his apartment in LA. And I hadn't sort of heard what else he'd been doing. So who brought this project together, by the way? Well,
no, really the French guitarist, Stefan, had the vision for it. And, he writes instrumental tracks, and we find melodies and lyrics for them. And sometimes a singer will be the one to write the melodies and lyrics to the instrumental tracks, which are demos. And then we went into the studio with a really great band and recorded the record. Matthew Cause I left out. Matthew is a great part of this. Matthew has a band called Not a Surf.
Yes, I see.
He's done some brilliant work on this. Whoever I'm forgetting, please forgive.
Did you have Juliana Hatfield? She's in it as well.
She was on the previous record, and she was going to be on this, and she has a busy schedule, and at the last minute said she just couldn't make time for it.
Right.
But she's on the previous Salt Collective record.
My God, this is a very amazing project again.
It is.
So who directs this and drives this project together, did you say?
Well, I mean, I'm the producer on it.
Yes. So that's you.
Everybody contributes. I mean,
That's another massive piece of work, isn't it? And did you say you're mastering it and it will be coming out later in the year?
Yes, I think middle of October. However, last week, an EP by the band came out, which is really the tracks we made while we were making the other record. We ended up doing a bunch of covers at the session. They're not necessarily covers that have been released before, but they're, there were songs that, there's a track Mitch Easter did from Let's Active. I mean, Mitch Easter's a big part of Salt Collective, of course.
Oh, yes. Is that Try the Lost and Found?
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's it. So that's your EP, The Last Day That We're Young.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that just came out. But the main record, I think all those tracks on the EP are quite good, and we wouldn't have put them out if we didn't think that. But they're really an appetizer for the main record in October.
Blimey, keep it. And what label will this be coming out on?
Propeller Sound Recordings.
My God, this is very exciting. I guess
good. I'm glad to hear you.
I know. I mean, the lineup of musicians you got on it is just amazing. So, yes, I Want to Tell You, which is a Beatles song as well.
Yes, I'm just finishing a video for that today. I mean, that was just one we did. We thought we'll run this down to kind of warm up for the main thing we had to do in it. We played it a few times, and then when I came back to it and listening to everything we'd done at the big studio, I realized, well, this is really good. And I got the Lemon Twigs to do the harmonies, and I was going to sing lead on it, but I thought I'm singing too many things. So I asked this guy named Chris Price to sing on it. I'm just a huge fan of his. He's a singer in Los Angeles.
Right. What band's he been in?
I know him from his solo work.
Right.
And he also produced the last Emmett Rhodes record. Emmett Rhodes was you'd say a McCartney-esque figure in Los Angeles in the late 60s and early 70s. And Chris Price found him and made a record with him shortly before he died a few years ago.
Crikey. It's all go, isn't it, really? Yes, so this is exciting. And then after the Salt Collective, what other little things have you got sort of lined up?
Well, I mean, I will do another record of my own. That would be my priority. We did record more songs than would fit on this record. So I have about a third of a record already recorded. And I'll just pick some more that I like from the pile of paper on my piano.
Yes. It's and obviously this is all in your studio, which is probably in the garden.
No, I mean, I record where I need to record. It's not always in my studio.
Right. It's around the place. Yes. Well, this is very good.
I mean, there's a big studio in Kernersville, North Carolina, I like to use. And there's a one in Durham, North Carolina as well.
God, there you go. It sounds good. Well, look, thank you ever so much for your time. And I'm very excited about the Salt Collective as well. This is going to be a very exciting... yes, the people you've got on it are just very fascinating. And I'm sort of keen to sort of hear what this first album was like live, which came out 2 years ago, and check out this EP.
I think it's definitely a good one, but it was done more remotely in the pandemic. This is much more organic, a bunch of good players in a studio together, and I'm very, very excited about it, but not as excited as I am about mine, and I hope all your listeners will.
Well, absolutely. No, this is good. Well, I'm very, yes, it's going to be great. I mean, I've heard the single, Anything Is Possible. I'll have to try and get Howard to send me a link to the album as well. But look, this has been fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much, Chris, for your time. And I seem to be sitting in darkness, but it is nearly 10 o'clock now. So
no. You're fine. I can see you.
Just see my face. Yeah, but look, thank you for your time. I hope that was all right. It was fascinating to hear.
Great.
It's interesting to hear the dB's. Obviously, it was the dB's story that slightly was on my radar. And then Howard mentioned it, and then, other bits and pieces. But obviously, being an 80s person, it's always interesting to hear, that period especially. So, yes.
Well, you should talk to my friend Peter Holsapple sometime. He's had, he wrote the great songs with the dB's and done a lot of interesting things. So he would...
yes. Is he on social media? This is always is he on Facebook?
I think he's on Facebook. Yeah, you can reach out to him there.
I'll have to. I will check him out. But look, thank you for your time. I hope you have a lovely day. I think. Are you 6 hours behind or 5?
That's kind of a metaphysical question I can't really go into. But if you mean it's now 4:55 here.
4:55. That's good. Yeah, it's just it wasn't supposed to be a sort of a deep one. But anyway, look, have a lovely afternoon and evening, and Olga. Okay, take care. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye. That, dear listener, is the end of the interview. A massive thank you to Chris for giving me the time for that. As I said, he's got a new album, and I'll put a link in the notes below for you to click on. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can. On any of the social media platform sites, just do C86 Show. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbeam. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.